back to That's So Fringy podcast. I am Rick.
And I'm Kristen.
And we are back with our third installment of our Route 91 Vegas shooting series that we're doing with the False Flag series. We started this talking about all of the abnormalities.
Whoa.
How does that word go? Abnormalities in the official narrative and all of the things that didn't really add up. We talked about the official narrative. We walked through all the weirdness. Tonight, we just want to kind of finish it up, get to the end of it, and talk about the really weird things like the helicopters. What was going on with these helicopters that were flying around that night?
Well, okay, so hang on. Let's go back just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Let's go. So I know we kind of briefly mentioned there was a Hispanic woman that kind of fought her way to the front of the stage, right? You know, like half an hour, something like that, 40 minutes before the shooting began. So she basically pushes her way to the front and says, you're all going to die. Everybody get out of here. You're all going to die tonight. And so she's escorted out by security, and that was the end of it, right? And then there was also I'm not super tech savvy, as most of you probably know, but there is a message board called 4chan, which I'm not entirely sure how it all works, but there was a guy named John on 4chan, and there was multiple messages written talking about a high casualty event that's going to happen in Las Vegas. And he didn't really give like an exact timeline, but he said it was going to happen soon or whatever. And it ended up being like 3 weeks. I mean, it wasn't that long after this, but he talks about this high casualty event. And they're going to use that to try and install backscatter machines at all the casinos. So
what's a backscatter machine?
And a backscatter machine is essentially what you go through at the airport, where you go in and you stand and you put your arms and your legs out, and it does like a full body scan. And in fact, they did install backscatter machines not too long after this event in some places in Vegas. And it turns out people don't really want to be irradiated every time they want to go into a casino or go get some food or go to their room. And so they kind of flopped. I mean, people just weren't having it. So, but there's a little bit more on that in a little bit when we start to talk about some of the motives for some of this stuff. But those were two big things that happened ahead of time to warn people. And another funny thing was Paddock was actually recorded earlier in that week, you know, because he was in the casino for days before this all happened. Sure. And he was recorded at a I think it was a craps table or something with a Hispanic woman, actually two Hispanic women, which the media and nobody ever talked about.
Interesting.
So a little suspect there. Let's go to...
Yeah, I don't understand how you could have a person in your room that is Hispanic woman and have this same Hispanic woman, not the same one. We're not saying it's the same one. We're saying there's also this lady that is Hispanic that's warning everybody that something very violent is about to go down, which it just seems odd. Now, again, we're not saying that this is the same lady. We're just saying it is interesting that this lady seemed to have some inside knowledge of some sort for whatever reason. And 4chan is, for those of you that are Q followers or don't know much about Q, that's where a lot of the Q drops, the things that Q was posting, for those that are QAnon freaks. That's where a lot of that stuff started, was on 4chan, and then it went over to 8chan. And so it's basically these message boards where you can be anonymous. You can say what your name is on the internet, but you're really anybody. You're this. The idea is that you want to be anonymous and you want to say certain things, but you don't want anybody to know who you are. So it's very encrypted,
Gotcha.
very hard to find out who these people are, which is why nobody's ever been able to find out who Q is. Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So another odd thing that happened right after. So right after the shooting, we remember Jesus Campos. He was the security guard that went to look at the open door alarm.
Mm-hmm.
Right after the shooting, he's got like a ton of interviews that are, everybody wants to talk to him. And, it was hot news for a day or two. So he does a couple of interviews on like network TV. I think he was scheduled with like NBC or, another big network. This several mornings. I don't remember if it was the third or the fourth day after, but he was scheduled to do an interview and he never showed up. So everybody was like, where did Campos go? Turns out he went to Mexico on a prearranged vacation.
Oh, so
he's just been through this huge traumatic event, right? This huge, biggest, let me remind you, biggest mass shooting by a single gunman. He's gone through this event. He's done a couple of interviews that were kind of strange, in my opinion. I mean, just a little weird. And then he's all of a sudden missing, doesn't tell anybody where he's going. He schedules an interview with NBC and then remembers he had a vacation to Mexico. I'm not sure. Like, how does that happen? I don't know. I really don't. So he goes to Mexico for this prearranged vacation. And then when he comes back, he only does one interview when he comes back, and it's on the Ellen show. It just looks very staged. It looks really bizarre. It's a very weird interview. And Ellen is super weird to me anyways for a lot of reasons, but
maybe that she's a Rothschild?
Yeah, could be something like that. So she comes out with like a whiteboard and she like reenacts the crime scene, which is super weird. Like, would you do that with a survivor of an event like this? Would you be like, so she's basically reenacting and she goes, so then you went down the hallway, right? And she's like being all, I don't know, just like
coachy.
Yeah, coachy and he's just kind of like, It was just a really weird, like it seemed more like an interrogation or this is your story and you're going to stick to it, right? Kind of a thing.
Building the story up for him.
Yeah. And then another side note is that Ellen happens to be sponsored by MGM. She has her own slot machines in their casino. She's a big deal at MGM. So
she's a big deal anyway because she's a Rothschild. A lot of people don't know this about Ellen. If you do your research, you'll find out that she's a Rothschild and that her whole thing about bringing the gay thing into mainstream, this first gay woman that's, in the news and it's so hard for her to be gay in this day and age and all these things. Like, I get it. But she had an agenda. She was a pawn playing her part. She was trying to teach everybody that it's okay to be gay and it's okay to be this and it's okay to be that. And all of her shows and all of her things, just like Oprah, they're trying to teach you things about the world and continue to walk these narratives through. You're allowed to talk about certain things, but you're not allowed to talk about other things like Epstein's Island and how weird it is that Ellen's set is very similar to the buildings on Epstein Island, same stripes, same palm tree look, same colors. It's very homage, almost like a call out to, symbolism to something that's a little more nefarious. Also, she's had people on talking about, skincare products that has baby parts and pieces in them. So Ellen is strange.
She's sus.
Yeah, she's strange.
Yeah, very strange. So when the official report came out, it was and Lombardo was he never wavered from this point that that Paddock shot himself between 10:16 and 10:18. So no matter what timeline that, we talked about the changing timelines and how and why with a digital footprint, like what we should have, there shouldn't be a change in the timeline, but there is.
Right.
This point never changes. He says that that Paddock shot himself between 10:16 and 10:18. And the reason that they know this is because the heat signatures in the room quit registering body heat at that time. Okay, so if anybody knows anything about the medical community, when you pass on, your body does not immediately go into rigor mortis. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. It can take like up to 12 hours for your body to assume room temperature. Yeah. So it just does, that part just doesn't make any sense. And if they knew that he was dead at that time, because he came out with that pretty early on in the investigation, then why did they wait so long to breach the room? If they knew that if they could pull up the heat signature in the room, and at by 10:18 they knew that he was dead because there was no heat signature, then why did they wait over an hour to go in there? And why did they wait for SWAT and all this stuff when there was only one SWAT officer that was part of that ragtag group of guys that went in?
Yeah. I mean, if you can see the heat signatures inside that room, which obviously they can, you would know that there is no threat. There's no reason to wait for SWAT. There's no reason to do all those different things, because it shouldn't be a surprise. It's not like you're going to any other room as a SWAT officer or as a police officer with no intel on what's on the inside, because you don't have these special tools. We're talking about there's no reason to not breach, because all of the heat signatures, one heat signature is on the ground. According to your official narrative, one heat signature is on the ground and there's no danger anymore. Right. So why don't just breach? Just breach right then. And why do you wait an hour? It doesn't make sense. Why do you wait an
hour? And why do you keep telling everybody that you're waiting for SWAT to get there to breach, and then you end up an hour later breaching without SWAT anyway? Yeah. And there was actually, which is kind of, it just made me a little bit sad, but there was one officer that got fired, and he didn't get fired for a couple of years, mind you, after all this body cam footage came out. But there was one officer that got fired for cowering in the hallway. So basically failing to breach the room and do his job, and he got fired. But he said that he was basically ordered to stand down. He was ordered to wait for SWAT, which is kind of was the narrative that everybody was waiting for. So that was a really weird, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. It just seems like they needed to blame somebody and do something. So they're like, you over there, you're fired for this, I don't know. It just seemed so weird.
Like on Monsters vs. Aliens, where he's you fire somebody.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, man. It's almost like he's just a patsy, just somebody that they're throwing under the bus. Or could it be that he thought it was all an exercise, and so he could be trying to follow the regular directions of the exercise, and he heard wait for SWAT, so he was waiting for SWAT. Was he cowering? Did he not do it because he knew something was nefarious and he decided not to do it, so he got punished? Who knows? He wouldn't
follow the story that they were trying to get them all to follow. I don't know. There's just too many moving parts to really know. But and the other, really weird thing that you guys will probably remember from the last episode is they had the gentlemen that were listed as breaching the room, those 8 guys that went in. But then from the body cam footage, we see 2 other guys that are not listed on any of the reports. They are SWAT guys, but they're not listed on anything. They're not even listed as being in the hotel that day. So there's a lot of other body cam footage from other police officers throughout the evening, and there's a couple of them. One in particular that I'm thinking of, that where the guy, it's like a cop, and he's talking to a bystander or whatever, and he's like, well, SWAT took down the guy. So the narrative that all of the police were under that night was that SWAT took down the guy. But then why did they not have 2 of the 3 SWAT officers listed on any of the reports? It doesn't make any sense.
The discrepancies just add up over time. And you get to the point where you're like, okay, this whole thing doesn't make any sense. There's got to be something else going on, something else a lot more nefarious, because they're going through a lot of work to try to cover up what the reality of this situation is, which we'll get into in a little bit. But let's get to the helicopters, because this is the part that's
Rick is all about the helicopters.
We have to know that these gunshots were not coming from that room, right? Which is the major narrative. And when you get us here saying there was only 8 casings on the ground, there was only 8 shots fired from that room, it doesn't make any sense. Everybody's like, well, what happened to all of those rounds? What about all of the... They weren't coming from that room.
And there was a lot. I mean, the eyewitness reports for the night, there is thousands of them. There was reports that there was gunfire coming from under the stage. There was reports there was gunfire. There was people killed in many places along the strip for that whole night. So it begs the question, was all of this going on just to kind of create a chaos environment? Because when people are in chaos, they don't make the best decisions. Maybe they don't remember things exactly correctly, or because you get that adrenaline dump and all of that. So was it just to create confusion? And remember, there is multiple reports of people saying that the gunfire was coming from a helicopter, and there was, according to all of the data, there was no helicopters in the area at that time. So
I don't believe that.
Here is a fun. Actually, before we do the helicopters, sorry, Rick, you're going to have to wait a second.
Okay.
One more little thing was, so people probably, not to be gruesome, but people probably don't realize that when there's a crime scene, the police don't go in and clean it up for you. Fun fact. So if somebody shoots themselves and there is brain matter and blood and whatever everywhere, there's actually crime scene cleanup companies that you hire to come in and clean up that stuff. Unless your family or, obviously you can clean it up yourself if you want to. But there are firms that they just go in and clean up crime scenes. So this whole area, this whole 16-acre lot of land that this festival was on was a crime scene. Plus, the whole Vegas Strip was a crime scene. But for this area specifically, they didn't hire a crime scene cleanup crew to come in for almost a month and a half. So this event happens. The FBI has control of the scene the whole time. So they maintain control of this whole area for a month and a half before they call in any crime scene cleanup people to do their job. But here's the funny thing, that the FBI, they were so kind that they actually went around and patched up the bullet holes. They repainted, they cleaned up all the blood spatter. They really talk about being super kind, But this is just not something that the FBI does. They don't go in and clean up and patch holes in buildings and hire private contractors to come in. And the thing that really got me was they repaved the entire parking lot. So not only did they cover up all the bullet holes and all of the blood spatter, because you can get a lot of information out of blood spatter. You can get a lot of information out of bullet holes. One of them being the trajectory of how this person was shot. Were they shot from above? Were they shot from below? All of that stuff comes from bullet trajectory and blood spatter. That's how you figure out most of that information. So they came in and repaved the entire parking lot so nobody could go in and look at any of the trajectory of the bullets at all. Which is, it's just a very weird.
Maybe they were trying to save money in the FBI, and they were doing a little bit of like sweat equity type thing. Where they're like, we'll do a little bit of this work for you so you don't have to worry about it. It seems nice. It seems generous.
It does.
But it also seems convenient. It's a real convenient truth.
Yeah, because so you couldn't, there was no way that you could go in and try to reenact it, because people went down, especially like, we'll get into maybe if we have time. There's a couple of stories of people like survivors that really, they were like, this did not happen the way that they're saying it happened. And they were starting support groups, and they wanted, to get together with people and try to figure out what actually happened. And they had there was no forensic information left at the scene at all that anybody could look at.
Yeah.
Except for the FBI for a whole month and a half.
I mean, how much more evidence does a person need to say something's off here? Something is completely off. So can we please talk about helicopters?
Okay, let's do helicopters.
Okay.
Just for you.
Okay.
Okay, so no flight data reported of helicopters in the area.
Okay.
But funny thing is, so one of the things that I wanted to mention was that Sundance helicopter. So this place is, there's a woman that calls 911, and she says, my daughter is calling me from the Sundance helicopters and saying that they've been basically hijacked. Like the hangar's been hijacked. Some lady's shot. They can't get any phone calls out to anybody. They can't call 911. So they were calling their family to call 911. So how is there a certain like jammer or something, or was 911 just so busy that they couldn't get through? Like, what would cause them to not be able to call 911?
Yeah, it could be multiple things. I mean, if you're a crew that does this type of a thing, false flag type stuff, you're going to cut phone lines, you're going to jam phone lines, you're going to do all the basics, because you don't want that message to get out before the exercise is over. You want to complete the mission, then you can turn all that stuff back on. So they would probably jam, they would probably do that. And the overwhelming response that, as we talked about, that they're having to 9/11 or 9/11. I mean, that they're having to 911. Yeah. All of those calls are bogging them down. People are having waiting times and those type of things that you don't usually have. I mean, if you think about
and that was kind of what their official narrative was they were just really busy or whatever. But how this mom can get through not being on site to 911 is weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's happening at Sundance Helicopters. They do helicopter tours where you can basically go out on a helicopter and they take you out to the desert, because it's not very far outside of Vegas that it's Nothingsville. There's nothing out there. So they'll take you. Yeah. Let's not get into that.
Okay.
That's another episode or 12. So you can take these helicopter tours where they have these big guns that are mounted in these helicopters, and you can shoot at targets in the desert. Some of them are exploding targets. I mean, it's a fun thing. I would do it in a heartbeat. Like, rent a helicopter and get to shoot at things in the desert. That would be sweet. So this helicopter, essentially, if this helicopter place gets taken over, they have everything that they need. They have a helicopter. They have a weapon in there. Like, they have everything that they would need. And so I think that that's what they did. I think that they went to this. And by the way, the Sundance Helicopter Tours place is now closed.
Closed for business.
Yeah. Closed for business.
No longer can you go and shoot at people with machine guns on the strip. Yeah. That's not allowed anymore.
So that one is closed.
So we're basically talking about a place where they rent helicopters, gets taken over by this band of crazies who the lady that's there is saying that we can't make any phone calls out, we can't help, but they're stealing the helicopters basically, and they've shot somebody on site. Is that correct? So there's a gunshot wound on site where somebody gets shot, and some helicopters get commandeered. 3 helicopters, as it would be, I believe. And specifically, there's some weird transponder stuff. So a transponder is basically like what air traffic control uses to monitor different entities in the air. So whether that be airplanes or helicopters or whatever, everybody has their own call sign. Now, call signs can change, but they have to maintain the understanding of what your tail sign is and all these different things. So you can be tracked in the air, mostly so that people don't crash into each other, and you can have the correct landing times and all that stuff. So what certain researchers were finding on the internet was that these transponders that correspond to these three particular helicopters from Sundance were in the air that night. And
so there's this Flight 24 radar, which is a site that basically tracks all of that stuff, the tail numbers, the call signs, all of that. So at 9:52 p.m., the night of the incident, 3 helicopters fly behind the Mandalay Bay, and in the same spot, boop, transponder turns off. And then another one comes in, boop, transponder turns off. And then a third one. So all the transponders turned off at right about the same area, which happened to be behind the Mandalay Bay, which was super weird. And if you watch that documentary that we have talked about multiple times, they have all of this stuff on there. Like you can look at the flight patterns and all of that stuff.
You can see the transponder data when it turns off. You can see them
turn off. Yeah.
When it turns back on, all the directions of flight, all of that stuff. If you want a visual representation of this, the documentary that she's speaking of is linked in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing that was weird was when they went and collected the, CCTV from all over the strip, which a lot of it is just randomly missing, which is crazy and unfortunate, but
quite shocking.
It happens in these big cases. Weird. So, but in some of the CCTV that you could find, there is very clear. I don't know if you guys have been underneath a helicopter, but there's this thing called helicopter wash, where it's basically the air from the blades of the helicopter that comes down and stirs up dust and stirs up stuff that's in the area, like dirt and twigs and all kinds of stuff, because it's helicopter blades. I mean, they're big.
Yeah.
So in multiple CCTV videos, you can see helicopter wash, which is strange for there being no helicopters in the area.
Right. I mean, that would be odd to have rotor wash in areas where there are no rotors.
Yeah, that's super weird.
Unless they were there.
Right. And if you'll remember, I don't know if you haven't listened to the sound of the shooting, there's multiple documentaries out about it. There was one that was on like Netflix or something that was pretty good.
Narrative.
But the official narrative. But you can hear there's like different volleys of gunfire. So you hear the gunfire, and then there's a pause in which they say he's either moving locations or reloading or whatever. And it would go again, and you would get these like 80 to 100 rounds again, and then there would be a pause. So what I'm wondering, and what it appears to me, is if I'm in a helicopter and I'm flying behind the Mandalay Bay, and if there's 3 of us, and we're going around the Mandalay Bay and coming around and shooting, is that pause those helicopters going behind the building to circle back around? Because remember, they have to make it seem like it's coming from the Mandalay Bay.
Right.
So if they're shooting down at the crowd and then circle around, the whole time that they're behind the building circling around, there would be no gunfire.
Yep. Well, and on these belt-fed weapons, which is what's on these helicopters at Sundance, they're more of a machine gun belt-fired weapon instead of a magazine reload weapon. So usually belt-fired weapons come with 200 round belt-fed strips. And so if you're doing a reload, it's not after 100 rounds. It's usually after 200 rounds. So in this case, the machine gun fire wouldn't be reloading as often as a 100 round clip would be. But as they would fly around, as you're saying, you still want the angle and trajectory of the noise of the everything that the false flag is trying to create, you want that to be coming from behind or at the Mandalay Bay area. So yes, I would agree. As they're flying around, you would have to be firing from that area mostly. Mm-hmm. Now, there were other things going on, as we said, on the ground where people were firing from all different places. They had some different exits that were all. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it anywhere and everywhere. You can even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works.
Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today.
Then you can go ahead and distribute your podcast to Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are heard.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and when you want to take the conversation with your fans to the next level, Q&A polls are the best way to get them talking.
With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions.
And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We've been using Spotify for Podcasters, and we highly recommend you give it a try. Download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters and get started.
All seem to be kind of blocked off by gunmen, whereas people would run out, they would be fired at as they were running out. It almost seemed like they had corralled these people into this area, knew where the exits were, surveyed it, and started just kind of picking people off in a cage. It seems
there was limited per number of people in a setting, a building of sorts. You have a maximum capacity of people you can have in there for fire code and all that stuff, right? For this exact situation.
Sure.
And you have to have a certain number of exits that are unlocked, meaning you can have a door there, but if you go into a store and you see that little sign above that says the store has to remain unlocked during business hours, that's why it has to stay unlocked for fire code and all of that stuff. So there should have been, there's different reports, but there should have been at least 4 exits that were open from the inside out. Now that doesn't allow people from the outside to come in. Sure. So they can have something there, but it needs to be accessible from the inside out. And there was really only, was it gate 7, or there was really only one gate that was
gate 7.
That was really open. And then there's video of people running out of gate 7, and then they're turning around and going back in because there's gunfire coming outside of the festival from the street. So if you've got 3 helicopters that are taking turns shooting down into this whole area, and remember, we talked about the people that were shot behind the Tropicana. So there was a gentleman back there that said that there was around a dozen, I think, casings that were in the parking lot behind the Tropicana that were like big
cartridges.
Yeah, big cartridges, and they weren't like right together. Like somebody standing with a weapon and firing off those 8 shots, they would all be in, what would you say, like a 2 or a 3 foot circle, maybe. Yeah. These were like spread through the parking lot, as if a helicopter were flying over the top and shooting from a helicopter, and those are going to have a bigger spread pattern than they would have even if a person was running full speed and shooting an automatic weapon. You still wouldn't get a scatter like that.
No, I mean, that's too far of a distance. It would have to be, it would have to be shell casings falling from a helicopter. I mean, we've seen this in the movies. We've seen, Vietnam era videos like Forrest Gump, where they're coming in hot with the machine gun, and they're firing down on people, and you're just seeing all of those casings just rain down. A lot of times in slow motion, especially if it's Michael Bay filming it, and you see a lot of slow motion of these casings falling. That's what we're talking about. They're flying across the parking lot or across an area, and you're getting these very large casings falling all the way to the ground and leaving this trail. But it's a very confusing trail if there were no helicopters that night. However,
so actually, and I think we did a good job, I think, already proving that shooting from that window with a weapon with a bump stock on a bipod is absolutely not what you hear in the documentary. They actually go through and do like audio analysis of all the different shots that you can hear that they say that it's echoes, right? Because you've got all these tall buildings, you've got Nothingsville around it, so you're hearing like an echo. So he's shooting from over here at the Mandalay Bay. You might hear an echo down at New York. But the thing about echoes is you don't hear like 10 shots and then you would hear 10 shots and then an echo of 10 shots. And then you would hear 8 shots and an echo of 8 shots. You don't hear 10 shots and then an echo of 6 shots. Those are 2 different weapons that are being fired at near the same time, enough to they could use this echo theory, and most people would buy it because it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You know, when you've got these, you know, if you've ever been to Vegas, you've got these huge buildings. Of course, there's going to be an echo. Like that makes sense. But if you don't go through the audio and analyze it the way these people did and isolate the shots individually, it would appear as though it's an echo, but it absolutely is not.
Yeah, it's definitely not cracking back or echoing back. They're different calibers, different sounds of weapons. The repetitiveness of a machine gun is very distinct from a bump stock. I mean, you're not gonna. If you know, as they say, right? If you know, and you don't have to explain it to anybody. You just already know because of the experience that you have in your life as a human being. And that's what we're doing is we're putting together the things that don't make sense on this podcast. And we're letting people know we don't have all the answers, but these are things that we know from our life. These are our own experiences. And many of you out there have these same experiences. You may go out shooting with your family, or you may be an avid hunter, or you may have military background that tells you that everything that we're saying is true and that the official narrative isn't jiving because of your life experience. You can use those experiences in your life to test the spirits, if you will, test the reality that they're trying to put in front of you. That's what we have to do. And that's why we're bringing this up. Sure, you can just go watch the documentary yourself and not have to listen to us about all of this, but we're trying to help you to understand that there are a lot of nuances, and what do these nuances really mean, and why would they do such a thing? And that's the important piece. But moving forward, what do you got next?
So there was another part where they found some emails back and forth between Paddock and his girlfriend. So, and these were very strange. I think I have them on here somewhere. Hold on, let me try to find them.
So these are just email correspondence back and forth between the girlfriend and him. What are they talking about mostly?
So They used it to make it sound like it was him premeditating this whole plan. Okay. So, but let me read this and you tell me what your thoughts are. So this is an email from Paddock to his girlfriend. It says, "Try an AR before you buy. We have a huge selection located in the Las Vegas area." I mean, that seems like a weird email, but okay. So then later in the day, girlfriend emails back that says, "We have a wide variety of optics and ammunition to try." Okay, weird.
And so she's emailing this to him.
Right, so they're going back and forth. So then he emails back to her and says, "For a thrill, try out bump fire ARs with a 100-round magazine." So
specific.
Right. So they use that to try to make it seem like a manifesto or an admission of guilt or pre-planning or whatever. But to me, they sound more like a marketing email or like we're gonna make a Craigslist ad. So what do you think about this? Or it sounds more marketing style to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that would be something that I would send out. That's why it was weird to me when you said that she was sending it to him, because if they were in business together and they're connected in some way, physically or dating, whatever they say that it is, you're not going to send that to me unless you're sending it to a whole bunch of people and you CC me, or
I'm sending it to you as a business partner.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
What do you think?
You're adding me in as a, what do you think about this? Or you send it out and I'm just happen to be one of the people in your contact list. You send it to all contact lists and it comes to me as well. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense why she would be sending it to him unless it was them being involved in some sort of a business aspect where they're promoting the idea of, come and look at these guns that we have for sale. You can shoot them. We've got tannerite, which we already know that they did. We've got tannerite. You can blow things up. We can go out in the desert and shoot some things. What do you want? What do you need? We've got it all. That is like flea market shit. I mean, it's what it is. You're promoting an opportunity for people to come and look at guns. That is what I think about that.
That's what I think too. And so he's got 24 weapons in his room. They're sending these emails back and forth prior to this event happening, which they're trying to spin as a manifesto. But I think they had a big buyer that was going to come and look at these weapons. This is what they thought was going to happen. And maybe Paddock got a little, we've already talked about him being a government employee. Was he an asset? Who knows? Was his dad an asset? How did his dad get away with all the crap that his dad got away with? Was it a generational, we work with the feds kind of a family? Because that's a thing that really happens.
Right.
So in that vein, it makes the most sense that maybe he got a little bit spooked by something. Maybe he's dealing with big names like, I don't know, the CIA, the FBI, all of these people. And maybe he sent her back to the Philippines because he didn't want her to be there at that time when this deal was going to go down, because maybe he had an inkling that something was weird. I don't know. But that makes more sense to me than the official narrative. And so there are some other things that happened after the shooting that were really weird. And I don't know that we need to get into all of them, but there was like some people that maybe weren't willing to play ball that ended up dying in weird ways. Like there was one that was a husband and a wife, and he lost his cell phone the night of the shooting. The other thing was that they confiscated everybody's phones and laptops and electronics that anybody that they could get their hands on to confiscate their stuff. And you guys are probably like, why would people turn in their phones? Well, if you present it in a way that makes it seem like we're trying to catch who did this, we need all the information we can get, I would turn my phone in. I'd be like, here, take whatever I have, find the guy, like get it done.
It's terrible.
So that was the way that it was presented, was turn in all of your stuff so that we can figure out who did this, because this is awful. This is a tragedy. People are sad at this time, like they're going to turn in their stuff. So people turn in their devices. So this gentleman happened to lose his phone during the episode. But his wife has her phone. She's updating people like in real time on Facebook about what's happening during the shooting. So they were pretty like outspoken about it. So a week later, after the Vegas shooting, they die in a low speed car crash, like less than 30 miles an hour. That their car turns into basically a fireball, and they die.
A 30 mile an hour fireball?
Yeah.
All right.
So then dad's cell phone is returned to the daughter once everything is released. There was nothing from the night of the event on his phone, but they know that he had his phone, at least in the time coming up, because there was stuff they had both put stuff on Facebook about being at the concert and other stuff. So that was a little strange. Okay, so it gets returned to the daughter.
Yeah,
wiped of all the stuff that happened that night, which is weird. But then fast forward to everybody's stuff was wiped for that night. Like the phones weren't wiped entirely. It was phone calls, text messages, photos, videos, anything like that were taken during that time frame.
Yeah, event specific.
All of that stuff was confiscated as evidence. Which seems like, okay, I mean, take my phone. If it helps you find the guy that did it, take my phone. Rick probably wouldn't. He'd be like, you're not taking my phone.
Hell no.
He'd probably be one of the people that would die in a low-speed car crash because he would not comply. But I would hand in my phone. I totally would. So there was another one.
Before we go there, you act off emotion, right? That's what these people do, is they play off of your emotion. That's why they do shootings like this, so that they can get gun control. That's why they'll try to kill people with vaccines so that they can give you a cure. They have all of these different ways to pull on the heartstrings because they're not to
manipulate you.
Yes, they're not trying to help you. They're trying to manipulate you so that they can control you and make more money. Yep. This is how it always works. And so when you realize that people are asking for your phone after a very suspicious event and you have questions, there's no reason for them to take your phone, take the information off of your phone. They can copy it. They don't have to delete it. That's what we understand. They used
the guise that it was... Well, same thing with 9/11. It's national security.
Yeah, it's national security.
They say that, and this end of story. You don't get an argument. It's we took all this information off your phones because we need it as evidence. Okay,
yeah, so
whatever.
So they delete it, and you don't ever get to have it again. So and this is why the founders put in the Fourth Amendment, right? The search and seizure type thing that law enforcement does all the time is completely illegal. Like, the problem is, and Kristen just alluded to this, the problem is we keep consenting to this stuff. We think that they have our best interest in mind. Spoiler alert, they don't.
And
the
unlawful search and seizure doesn't come into play when you voluntarily hand in your phone, which is what people did.
Yeah. So stop volunteering your information.
Do not comply.
I'm done. Go ahead.
So there's a gentleman named Danny Contreras. So he's there the night. He tweeted, quote, "Feeling lucky to be alive. Can't believe I got out of the concert alive. 2 men chasing me with guns. Not everyone was so lucky." So he puts this on his Twitter page. And then he ends up being found shot to death in a hotel room.
Oh my gosh.
And after he dies, his Twitter account is permanently suspended.
This is what I mean. They're not afraid to kill you.
And there's lots of these. There's so many of these. There's a guy named Chad. I'm really bad with pronouncing names. Nishimura.
I think Chad.
Let's go with Chad. So Mr. Chad, he was the valet at the hotel that Paddock was staying at. So he was the one that actually took his luggage out of his car and helped him to his room. So he's interviewed and he says basically Paddock was a normal guy with a small, normal amount of luggage. Like, there was nothing weird. And he never changed his story. And then all of a sudden he is missing. He's still missing to this day. You cannot find the valet that unloaded Paddock's car the day that he got to the hotel.
I wonder if the Clintons know where he's at.
I don't know.
We should ask.
Oh my gosh. So there's another really quick one. There's another one of Kimberly Suckamel, who she was one of these people that went on to Facebook and was trying to organize a support group. She was trying to get people together because she knew that something was fucky, like something was off. So she's trying to so she has this quote, "I'm trying to organize a group of survivors. So if anyone wants to contact me, they can, because this effed up SHIT doesn't make sense. And we're trying to piece things together." So she puts this out. And then less than a week later, she's found dead in her home from an aneurysm or a stroke. And she's like in her early 30s. And you guys, this is what, 4 or 5 that I just gave you. There is hundreds of these people that died in really weird ways after the fact.
There's a lot of cleanup.
And yes, a lot of cleanup. It's just outrageous. Okay, so let's go into, for time's sake, some of the cover-up theories of what we think.
All
So
right.
one of the first things that came out was Antifa, right? It was an attack against the right-wing Trump supporters and blah, blah, blah. George Soros, which we've mentioned his name many times. He supports Antifa, obviously monetary. So he bet millions of dollars against the Mandalay Bay / MGM in the quarter prior to the shooting, to the tune of $42 million. So George Soros bets money against the Mandalay Bay before this happens.
Well, he's just trying to redeem his money, because if he tries to just pay all that money out, he loses. He forwards an agenda, but he loses. So if he
because shocker, the Mandalay Bay stocks went way down after this happened.
Who would have thought that would ever?
Who would have
happen?
thought?
Yeah.
So then another weird one was the CEO of the Mandalay Bay at the time sold off millions of dollars in stock market shares in the weeks before. And this guy openly supports, Islamic terrorist groups. So he sold off like 81%. We're not talking like I sold off a little bit of my shares just because I wanted like extra vacation money. No, 81%.
And millions of dollars. If you're the CEO, why would you? Because he didn't quit. Did he quit?
No, not right away.
He still kept doing his thing. He eventually moved on.
Was it like his daughter or something that was one of the judges in one of these cases? Like it just is it's so interconnected. It's unbelievable.
So many webs.
It would be like a 1,200 part episode to go through all of them.
And we're not going to do that to you.
No, we won't do that to you. I think we've given a lot of information. Yeah. So another one was ISIS. Okay, so ISIS claimed responsibility for the shooting. Not long after, actually. It was pretty quick. And according to the police records, they were on alert after a video came out in May that was talking about an ISIS attack in Vegas. So then ISIS claims responsibility before sunrise. Like it was fast by the next day.
I mean, if you were a bad guy and you did something crazy like that, you would want people to know about it, right? You would want everybody to know that was me.
And these big groups, they absolutely want credit for this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But is that all made up? Is that something that these people really care about?
Remember the news cycle. Who controls the news cycle, right? Their scripts go to the CIA before they get to say anything on air about anything. So the CIA is the news cycle.
Right.
So whatever they say, ISIS claimed responsibility. Well, they're all working for the same people. Right? They're just different heads to the same snake, basically.
The clowns in America.
Right. And the Las Vegas Police Department, like from the beginning, like vehemently denied that it was ISIS. They were like, there is no way that this is ISIS. How they knew that, nobody knows. But from the beginning, they claimed it was not. So another option is that it's a gun deal gone wrong. Just some high level targets wanted these guns, wanted Paddock out of the way. Like, who knows? Because the news articles were like, Lone Wolf, Las Vegas Massacre. It's really a false flag to cover up. Here's the one. You tell me. Rick likes this one.
Well, this is the one that seems the most plausible to me. So I'm a context guy, right? When I read the Bible, I'm usually reading it within their context because that makes the most sense to read a document that is from that time, right? So if I'm going to look at the context of what was going on that night, other than this concert, but what was going on that night that might have been a distraction from. And it's very interesting that there was a Saudi Arabian prince there that is the newly in charge of Saudi Arabia.
And this one got debunked pretty quickly also, but there is, if you can find it, you probably can't, but it's out there, a news article that says was Lone Wolf Las Vegas massacre really a false flag to cover an assassination attempt on the Saudi crown prince?
Mm-hmm.
So that was an article that came out that you can no longer find anywhere except for people that have screenshots of it. And I think it's in this documentary, actually.
Yeah, which is very interesting because you think about it. Who owns these floors? Did you know that people can buy floors?
Yeah, we didn't really go over that yet. But so you have the Mandalay Bay, and the top 4 floors of the Mandalay Bay is actually a Four Seasons.
Okay.
So it's not an MGM hotel. It's a Four Seasons, and it is owned by Al
Walid, who is the
Saudi crown prince.
Saudi crown prince. So the guy that is in charge of Saudi Arabia at the time, which is a huge playground for the cabal and has their hands in all kinds of dirty stuff. They own these 4, what did you say, 4 floors? These 4 floors on the top of the Mandalay Bay. So where everything is going on up above in the Mandalay Bay, they're trying to distract from whatever may be happening there, which the Saudi prince was there. Not the old Saudi prince, the new Saudi prince. And this is a problem. And this is where people have to understand what is actually happening in our world other than just what we see, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that we don't see. There's a lot of perspectives that we cannot personally have because we weren't in the building, we weren't there, we don't know. But what we can do is we can look into that night, that time. Well,
and what makes the most sense? I mean, it would have to be a very high level target that somebody's trying to assassinate to pull off something like this. To use all of the resources and they don't care about the loss of life. That's not they don't care about that. But all of the resources to cover up this stuff, it would have to be a very high level target. So remember that FBI handler that we had that was, in the background of Lombardo's press conference. Stupid things.
Yeah.
So at one point, somebody asked a question about this. They asked something about the Saudi crown prince because when it came out that he was there, people were interested. I mean, there was no right or left. People were interested in what was going on. So somebody at one of these press conferences asked him about it, and you can see this FBI handler who leans in and he whispers in Lombardo's ears, "Don't go there." And Lombardo, throughout all of the press conferences, he's over there like, you tell me what your questions are, and I'll tell you if I'm going to answer them. That was kind of his attitude, I felt like, in most of the interviews.
We're not
was
talking...
kind of like he had no qualms about just going, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that.
We're not talking about Saudi Arabia and the fact that they own these 4 floors and the fact that the new crown prince that has taken over Saudi Arabia and is actually friends with a guy named Trump and was capitulation happened during the tour, right? Trump did a world tour. You can see this, the greatest show on earth.
So was this Mohammed bin Salman? Is that the new Saudi? Yes.
Okay. That's the new Saudi prince. And so,
he was very controversial because he had a relationship with the Trump family. Yeah.
And they did the famous sword dance when Trump went and visited. If you haven't seen the sword dance, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Trump.
You can find it. Saudi
Arabia sword dance and capitulation tour, or just go watch the greatest show on earth and I'll link it in the description, because Trump is going around making the world either get on board with what they want to do, which is to get rid of the cabal and make everything right, or they don't get on board. And if you don't get on board, there's certain consequences and things that are going to follow. But the most important one is you're not going to be part of our new financial system, our new going forward system. And so when this capitulation happened, whereas the the old Saudi prince was the one that owns all this stuff in the Mandalay Bay, was removed. The new Saudi prince came in, and now he's the guy in charge. So the speculation is that he was in Vegas meeting with Trump or Trump's team, because there also is evidence that Jared Kushner was there, which we know is very connected to Trump.
Ivanka Trump was there.
Ivanka Trump was there.
Donald Jr. was there.
Don Jr. So Trump's camp was there. Do we necessarily? We can't put Trump there, but that's
we can't put him in those hotel rooms with the Saudi prince. But there also is video surveillance of the Saudi prince bin Salman getting escorted out of a hotel during all of this stuff going on.
And there are people that saw him in town wearing not the Saudi Arabia crown prince garb.
So that was also part of this theory, was the speculation that the reason that there were shootings happening all over the Strip is because they were trying to find him. So, and he was dressed in plain clothes. So they were just all over the place, like frantically trying to find this guy because they missed their target, basically.
Yep. They were trying to assassinate him, and a lot of people believe also Trump at the same time. So if we put all the pieces together, we step back and we look at the whole, because we've given a lot of information up until this point, and we're going to kind of wrap with this, because I feel like we just can put a bow on it and say we did our best to tell you guys.
Well, there's a little bit more.
Oh, okay. So you back up and you look at the whole of everything and you say, why would they do something like this? What is the point? How did they get it all done? And I feel like we've done a really good job of laying out the how and the why and all of that stuff. That's the hardest part, though, is
right.
Are they really trying to just assassinate somebody? And did they create all this other havoc because of that? Or are they doing it to just do gun control? Like that was a major thing that happened. But if it was for gun control,
the news cycle, the 24-hour news cycle wouldn't have dropped the story to nil within 10 days.
Right.
They would have hammered and hammered the only thing that really happened was that they were trying to get rid of bump stocks.
Dumb.
So remember that 4chan article where the guy's talking about the mass casualty event. So another post that he had put on there was that this mass casualty event will involve the Chertoff group. So if you guys remember Michael Chertoff, he was Bush's former Secretary of Homeland Security. Another thing that he's very well known for that we talked about on our 9/11 episodes is he was the co-sponsor of the Patriot Act. Weird. So another fun fact is that the Chertoff Group is the largest producer of backscatter machines. So obviously on October 3rd, the Wynn Las Vegas started putting these metal detectors and stuff like that. So they're the ones that kind of rolled out these backscatter machines and all of that. So the plan didn't work, but I'll tell you what, the Chertoff Group sure made a lot of money selling those backscatter machines for a while.
I bet.
Yeah. And another thing that really happened around that time was the YouTube censorship. So YouTube was kind of always you can put whatever you want on there. Like there's literally videos of people acting like cats. You can do whatever, you put whatever you want on there. Who cares? There's all kinds of crazy conspiracy theorists, whatever. But at this time, YouTube, it was the first time that they changed their algorithm to prevent any stories from trending that went against that official narrative of the shooting. It was the first time that they actually changed their algorithm. And then as we move forward, then they, obviously their algorithms were changed to eliminate really anything that has to do with Trump or, anything like that. But so at that point, they changed their algorithm and they began only trending news stories that came from large networks. So they wouldn't allow any smaller journalists or some of these investigative journalists that were really trying to figure out what the heck happened. They wouldn't allow any of those stories to be on YouTube anymore. which is unfortunate because it's one of those things where once they start taking things away, you don't ever get them back. So they start taking your freedoms away, and when in history have you ever then gotten those freedoms back?
Yeah.
Without some kind of civil war. So another really strange thing that happened after the fact was the governor / Las Vegas police department stole $33 million in GoFundMe. So they started a GoFundMe for victims, for whatever. And there was a small amount of money that was given to the victims. I mean, a very small amount of money. And the rest of it, 33 million of it, is just gone. They were never audited. The public was upset about it. There's public outcry, but it was suppressed. The money is still missing. And the original website, the original GoFundMe, was shut down. So you can't find any information about what happened to this money. And eventually people stopped asking because they just flat out were not answering questions. Like they just would be like, I'm not going to answer that. It was very strange.
I think the valet took it.
That could be. Maybe he went to Mexico too. So the other thing that they still will not release is the identity of the 3 women that were registered to the hotel room with Paddock, because they really, for whatever reason, they do not want these women's names coming out. Every single FOIA form that has been put in has been denied, asking in all manner of ways who those women were. And they did just deny them. So we have first names only. We have no identities, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. They've done a lot of work. They've done a lot of work to cover this up. And you just have to be reminded of the timeline, in my opinion. You have to think about when this happened. What happened? What was going on in the world? Well, 2016, Trump became president, right?
And it's hard to remember what life was like before 2016, before Trump. Because remember, Trump was... No, I'm not a huge Trump guy or Trump person. I don't super...
I hope you're not a Trump dude.
I got some splaining to do. No, I'm not a huge Trump person. I'm just not. But it's you cannot deny that the world changed drastically when he decided to run for president. I mean, it changed the whole trajectory of our country as far as the YouTube censorship in general.
The whole world.
Really,
it changed our whole world.
Yeah.
Like this one event changed the whole world. And a lot of people don't see it that way, but that's the reality. It changed the whole world because you got him coming in 2016. Hillary turns into a demon and starts spitting all kinds of nastiness. And they never thought she was going to lose. They never thought that she was going to lose. And then she loses because they cheated big time. She paid a lot of money to get that win and she didn't get it. And so then right after that, you've got this capitulation tour.
Crazy stuff
Trump
happening.
goes on, and then you've got this mass shooting, biggest shooting that's ever happened in the nation happens, and it just so happens to be in 2017, and there just so happens to be the new Saudi prince there. Like, come on, guys, timeline.
And then, so another
matters.
thing that was really weird was after this Saudi prince goes home. After the event, he goes home and he does like a big clean sweep of his people. Basically, he starts taking out a bunch of people that were like higher ups in the Saudi government and firing them. Like and his whole thing was he was trying to fight corruption.
Yep.
So, which is another just strange thing in my opinion, but
you be the deciding factor. You are the one. Use your own brain, use your own observations. Watch this documentary that we've talked about. Watch the Good Line Films documentary that we're talking about, The Greatest Show on Earth. All of those things are going to give you more and more knowledge, more of an opportunity for you to make a decision on what you think is going on in the world. God designed you with a brain and in the ability to reason, right? He didn't ask you to come into this world and be ruled by men. God asked you to come into this world and be ruled by him. Allow him to guide your footsteps. Allow him to tell you which way is up and which way is down and which way is left and which way is right. For too long, we've been listening to men tell us what reality is. We need you guys to start using your own senses. God gave you senses to interact with the world around you. And there's been this veil that has been pulled over our eyes. It's called scales in the Bible. Scales fell off of Paul's eyes and he was able to see things more clearly. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. The veil drops and you can really begin to see this stuff, but you have to do that work on your own.
Right. And the thing for me is always, if the official narrative doesn't make any sense, which it doesn't, there's nothing about the official narrative that makes very much sense to me, then why is if you want to put people at ease and you want people to, kind of calm down about a situation, like we've got it handled, guys, then just tell the truth. Like just tell us what really happened, because that's the fastest way to, quell rumors and to calm the people is to just tell them the truth. But they continually, how many times do they have to lie to us about something before we start to go, these people are liars?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. How many times?
Yeah.
I don't know. And there's enough times in this story that they lied about stuff, blatantly lied about stuff, to make me question the entire thing. And I'm not saying that the Saudi prince was the target or that Trump was the target, but it makes more sense to me that's the case.
Yeah.
And just for the simple fact that none of this was talked about at the time, and all of the information regarding any of this stuff has been scrubbed from the internet.
Yeah. I'm going to go with sus.
Super sus.
Yeah. Extra sus. Well, guys, there you have it. Part 3. We did it. We got all the way through all of the ramblings that we wanted to go on. We did all of the things. And now, as we said before, it's up to you. You decide. What do you think happened? We're going to get on with our false flag series. But before that, after this episode comes out on Sunday, we've got another episode, and it's all about clowns. And for those of you that don't like clowns,
literal clowns,
it might help you understand why you don't like clowns. And for those of you that do like clowns, it might make you wonder why you are liking them anymore. There's a lot of information that's going to come out, and you're going to be shocked. And there's going to be some Bible linkage, and it's going to be great. The word Nephilim might get thrown out. So for those of you that are interested in those type of categories, those type of things, come back, because we've got lots more episodes coming, lots more weirdness to go. We are That's So Fringy Podcast. My name is Rick.
I'm Kristen.
And we will be back for the next one. But until then, stay fringy, my friends.